It began, as it so often does, with a late-night burst of digital fury, a threat typed out on a social media platform designed to shake an allied nation and bend its government to his will. The target was North America's deeply intertwined aerospace industry. The man making the threat was Donald Trump. The country in his crosshairs was Canada. The plan seemed simple. Use a sledgehammer of economic coercion to force an immediate concession from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's government. On January 29, 2026, Trump posted on Truth Social demanding that Canada certify a series of American-made Gulfstream luxury business jets. If they didn't comply, he would bring the hammer down. He declared he was hereby decertifying Canada's own prized Bombardier aircraft and would slap a crippling 50% tariff on any and all planes sold into the United States. It was a raw display of power, unprecedented in modern trade disputes between the two neighbors. But something went terribly wrong for the former president. The threat, which seemed designed as a masterstroke of negotiation, didn't just fail, it spectacularly imploded. It unraveled in a matter of hours, exposing a stunning ignorance of the law, a reckless disregard for American jobs, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the very system he was trying to manipulate. This is the story of how a midnight ultimatum backfired, leaving Donald Trump publicly embarrassed. It's the story of how the Canadian government met the threat not with a thunderous counterattack, but with a deafening strategic calm. This is the breakdown of the aviation threat that blew up in Trump's face. So what exactly happened? And how did a move designed to show strength become a masterclass in public failure? Let's break it down. The retaliation, when it came, was pure Trump. It wasn't a formal diplomatic démarche or a carefully worded policy announcement. It was a late-night rage post on Truth Social, crafted for maximum shock value. The post was a tirade, accusing Canada of wrongfully, illegally, and steadfastly refusing to certify 4 models of Gulfstream business jets. Then came the ultimatum. In his own words, Trump declared, "We are hereby decertifying their Bombardier Global Expresses and all aircraft made in Canada until such time as Gulfstream, a great American company, is fully certified." Let's pause on that phrase for a moment. Hereby decertifying. It was a proclamation of immense power, as if a president could, with a social media post, ground an entire nation's aviation industry. The target, Bombardier's Global Express, is one of the crown jewels of Canadian manufacturing and a fierce competitor to Gulfstream's jets. But the threat didn't stop there. He included all aircraft made in Canada. And then, the final blow. If, for any reason, this situation is not immediately corrected, I am going to charge Canada a 50% tariff on any and all aircraft sold into the United States of America. A 50% tariff would be a death blow, effectively pricing Canadian aircraft out of their single largest export market. To understand the gravity of this, you have to understand what decertification implies. An aircraft's type certificate is its license to fly. It's a stamp of approval from a national aviation authority, like the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, in the US or Transport Canada, that declares a specific model of aircraft is safe to operate. If an aircraft is decertified, it is not legally allowed to fly in that country's airspace. Trump's post was, in essence, a threat to render thousands of Canadian-built planes worthless inside the United States. This wasn't just a trade dispute anymore. This was the weaponization of safety regulations for political leverage, something virtually unheard of in the modern, highly regulated world of international aviation. The message was clear: submit, or I will cripple one of your most important industries. The chaos had been unleashed. The question now was, would Canada buckle? On the surface, Trump's rage seemed to be about one thing: forcing Canada to approve a few models of Gulfstream jets. But digging just one layer deeper reveals the lie at the heart of the threat. This wasn't about a legitimate trade grievance. It was a crisis built on a misrepresentation of the facts. The core of Trump's accusation was that Canada was wrongfully, illegally, and steadfastly refusing to certify Gulfstream's jets. This painted a picture of a rogue Canadian government unfairly blocking a great American company. The reality was far more mundane. The certification process is a technical one, handled by independent regulators. The onus is on the manufacturer, in this case Gulfstream, to initiate the certification process in a new country and provide all the necessary data to show it meets that country's safety standards. Industry sources noted that Transport Canada is unlikely to proactively certify aircraft types. The idea that Canada was maliciously blocking the certification was a distortion. The process is a standard one, driven by the manufacturer and rooted in safety. So if the justification was shaky, what was the real motivation? It appeared to be a classic Trumpian play to a domestic audience. By championing Gulfstream, a great American company based in Georgia, he could frame himself as a fighter for American industry against supposed unfair foreign practices. The narrative was simple and politically useful. Trump stands up for American jobs. He likely believed this was a foolproof move. He would be seen as a hero to a major U.S. manufacturer while forcing a humiliating capitulation from the Canadian government, which he assumed would panic at the prospect of its entire aerospace sector being held hostage. He calculated that the economic pain would be too great for Prime Minister Carney's government to do anything but fold immediately. It was a calculation based on bluster, and it was a calculation that would prove to be catastrophically wrong. Donald Trump's threat wasn't just a shot at Bombardier. It was a loaded gun pointed at the heart of the North American economy. To understand the sheer recklessness of what he was proposing, you have to see the intricate web of steel, wires, and jobs that binds the U.S. and Canadian aerospace industries together. This isn't a relationship of rivals, it's a single, deeply integrated ecosystem. U.S. and Canadian aerospace supply chains are so intertwined that it's often difficult to say where one ends and the other begins. The U.S. exported nearly $9 billion worth of civil aircraft engines and parts to Canada in one recent year, while over half of all Canadian aerospace exports are sold to customers in the United States. It's a two-way superhighway of commerce. Let's talk specifics. There are nearly 2,700 Canadian-made Bombardier aircraft registered and in service in the United States. These include about 150 of the global express jets Trump specifically named, but also hundreds of regional jets that are the backbone of air travel for major U.S. carriers like Delta and American Airlines. An aviation analytics firm noted that decertifying all Canadian-made aircraft would hurt the operations of several U.S. airlines. Then there's the direct impact on American workers. Bombardier, the primary target of Trump's ire, is also a major American employer. The company stated that it employs approximately 3,000 people directly in the United States across 9 major facilities and works with nearly 2,800 U.S.-based suppliers. These are thousands of American jobs that depend directly on the health of this Canadian company. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAM, a union representing workers in both countries, immediately understood the danger. In a powerful statement, the union warned that such an action would cause serious disruption to the North American aerospace industry and put thousands of jobs at risk on both sides of the border. This is the reality Trump either didn't understand or didn't care about. He saw a Canadian company to punish, not an integrated North American industry to protect. He was threatening to burn down his own house to get at his neighbor. This threat of economic self-sabotage was the first critical flaw in his plan. The implosion of Donald Trump's aviation threat began almost immediately as the strategy slammed into two immovable objects: basic logistics and American law. First came the quiet walkback. As aviation experts and airlines processed the sheer chaos that would result from grounding thousands of operational aircraft, a sense of panic rippled through the industry. The logistical nightmare of paralyzing the regional fleets of America's biggest airlines was an apocalyptic scenario. Sensing they had massively overplayed their hand, White House officials began to discreetly clarify to reporters. The threat, they insisted, would only apply to new aircraft deliveries, not the thousands of planes already in service. This was a massive retreat, masquerading as a minor clarification. The initial threat was so powerful because of its implied immediacy. By walking it back, the White House showed they hadn't considered the real-world consequences, a clear sign they were scrambling. But the deepest humiliation was rooted in the stunning illegality of the threat. In the United States, the certification of aircraft is the exclusive domain of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, an agency whose mandate is grounded in one thing: safety. The President cannot simply order the FAA to certify or decertify an aircraft for political or commercial reasons. Aviation experts were quick to point this out. Nigel Waterhouse, an aircraft certification specialist, called Trump's threat just ridiculous. He explained that the FAA doesn't decertify planes unless there is an extremely high-risk flight safety issue, something that has rarely ever happened. Using this immense power as leverage in a trade dispute was, in legal and regulatory terms, completely absurd. Trump's threat wasn't just ill-advised, it was an empty gesture. He was acting like a king, issuing royal decrees in a system of laws designed specifically to prevent such abuses of power. He had threatened to pull a lever that wasn't connected to anything. The wall of law was unmovable, and he had just run headlong into it. As chaos erupted in Washington, a strange and powerful quiet emanated from north of the border. In the face of Trump's maximalist threat, Prime Minister Mark Carney's government executed a masterful strategy of strategic calm. They refused to take the bait. This was the brilliant counter-move that sealed Trump's humiliation. He had designed the entire affair as a public brawl. He wanted a fight. Instead, Canada gave him nothing. There were no angry denunciations or retaliatory threats. The official response, when it came, was delivered not by the Prime Minister but by his Transport Minister, Stephen McKinnon, and it was a masterclass in polite dismissal. In a statement, McKinnon calmly reinforced the rule of law, simply saying he would not interfere with the actions of U.S. aviation authorities. He wasn't engaging with the politics of the threat at all. He was simply describing how the world actually works. This response was devastatingly effective. By refusing to be drawn into a public slanging match, the Canadian government denied Trump the conflict he craved. Canada's refusal to engage made Trump look less like a powerful negotiator and more like a petulant, irrational actor. His rage was met not with fear, but with a calm, almost bored adherence to process and law. All Canada had to do was stand aside and let the threat collapse under its own weight. Trump entered the arena expecting a gladiatorial contest and was left shadowboxing alone in the middle of an empty stadium. The silence from Ottawa was deafening, and it was the sound of Trump's strategy failing in its entirety. So let's recap the spectacular trajectory of this self-inflicted wound. It began with a late-night, rage-fueled threat from Donald Trump, who fabricated a crisis around a routine regulatory matter. He issued a threat of breathtaking scope to decertify every single aircraft made in Canada and impose a crippling 50% tariff. Instead, the entire strategy unraveled. The White House was forced into a quiet walkback within hours. American labor unions, the very workers Trump claims to champion, publicly condemned the move as a threat to American jobs. And most importantly, legal experts confirmed that the president's threat was a legal fantasy, an act he had no authority to carry out. And through it all, the Canadian government simply refused to play along. The strategy of disciplined, strategic silence was the perfect counter. It denied Trump the fight he wanted and exposed his ultimatum for what it was: an empty, impotent tantrum. What was intended as a demonstration of strength turned into a global lesson in weakness. It showed that bombast and bullying are no match for quiet competence and the immovable wall of the law. The aviation threat that was supposed to humiliate an ally ended up profoundly and publicly embarrassing the man who issued it. What do you think? Is this a sign that these kinds of tactics are losing their power? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown insightful, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth analysis. Thanks for watching.